So my name's Chad Leben. I work for the Squire Society. It's a Canadian nonprofit, registered charity, that focuses on how technology can empower people with disabilities. In Canada last year, we served over 3,000 people. A lot of it was helping people with disabilities get back to work or access the accommodations that they need to work. But we have a new project that's kept me quite busy over the last couple of years, which I'm really excited about, and what I'm primarily here to talk about today. Stephen, can you hit my next slide, please? Thanks. So, the picture loads there. So, our name, Squire Society, comes from an individual named Neil Squire. I realize most of you are in California, so a couple of these names may not be as familiar to you, but in the early 80s, there was a big sort of disability rights movement that happened in Canada, and it really sort of changed the focus to the abilities of people with disabilities. A lot of that conversation started around a man named Terry Fox, who lost his right leg to cancer. But 2 years later, he started what we called the Marathon of Hope, where on his one good leg and a prosthetic, ran a full marathon every day for 150 consecutive days until the cancer spread through his body. A friend of his, Rick Hansen, who was also in the rehab hospital with him, had a spinal cord injury. He sort of carried on the sort of vision that Terry started, and in his wheelchair, literally went around the circumference of the world, over the Great Wall of China, across Canada, etc. And that was in the mid-'80s, and it really raised awareness of the possibilities of people with disabilities. Now, Neil was in the rehab hospital with Terry and with Rick, and he had a fairly significant car accident, and he broke his neck right at the C1 level. So because of that, he was unable to move his arms, unable to move his legs, and had very difficult time speaking, couldn't cough. So it really, really changed his life. Can you hit me on the next slide there? So a family friend of his, Bill Cameron, who was an engineer at our local university here in Vancouver, BC, UBC, went and visited Neil and saw about the lack of quality of life that Neil had. I mean, here was this bright young guy, was going to university, playing on the basketball team, and now was basically laying in a hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, and his only real communication was sort of blinking once yes, twice for no. I said, there's got to be something that we can do for Neil. Next slide, please, Stephen. So Bill was able to access some summer student funding, and through that he was able to invent some of the original sip and puff systems, which you may now see in controlling wheelchairs. So they taught Neil Morse code, and by Neil sipping and puffing on the tube, it became a dot or a dash, and they wrote some software to connect that to, at the time, was the state-of-the-art Apple IIe computer, some of the first generation home or personal computers that were coming out. So Neil, with no movement of his body, you gotta remember this is the early 80s, was fully able to control a computer by sipping and puffing. He was able to write commands, create letters, and it really opened up his world to how technology enabled him to have new opportunities, be connected, return to school, etc. This work sort of grew a life of its own on Bill. There's other people at the rehab hospital that needed other accommodations, and it became something that was larger that could be run off the side of Bill's desk. So he began incorporating a nonprofit organization, and around that time, Neil passed. So that's where we sort of got our name. It was in memory of Neil, where all of our work really started. Since this time, we're about to celebrate our 35th anniversary. We've served over 50,000 Canadians with disabilities. Next slide. Yeah, and we can skip the slide too, actually, Stephen, and talk a little bit about our history. So just to give you an idea of some of the other services that our organization runs, we run a free computer literacy training program where people can come in, figure out their assistive technology leads, and then are paired with a volunteer or staff member or intern student to help learn the computer skills to help make them independent. We offer this in all of our physical locations across Canada, as well as through online learning. So if someone isn't able to make it into our office because we have a lot of snow in Canada, or transportation isn't available, or they live in a rural community. We use webinar technology, exact same stuff we're using right now to speak with you, Blackboard Collaborate, to connect to people and provide personalized one-on-one learning. Next slide. We also run a smaller, but a computer refurbishing program that helps provide people that don't have access to computers to the access technology that they need. Anyways, I'll skip some of our other organizational programs and get on to what I'm really excited to talk to you about here today. Over the last couple of years, we've been launching a new initiative at the organization called Makers Making Change, which is really trying to connect disability professionals and people with disabilities to the maker movement to help make more affordable assistive devices, make more customized assistive devices, and things that ultimately can work better for people and meet their needs better. I talked with Squire. So our work in this area got started by winning a Google Innovation Award for one of our projects called the Lip Sync, which is an open source mouth-operated input device. So it's essentially a mouse that you use with your mouth, and really actually builds a lot of the work that we did with Neil way back when. Just it's no longer a commercial product that you have to buy for a couple $1,000. It's something that a maker can build in your community for a couple $100. We received funding in Canada from the Government of Canada, the Vancouver Foundation, to sort of build a larger repository of projects and start to build a matchmaking network. And in California, we've recently partnered with CTEC through funding support from the Disability Communications Fund to start working on helping build this program in the California area. I'll talk a little bit more about some specific California work that we have starting later in the presentation. But I always like to recognize our sponsors. This work happens because there's great organizations to help pay the bills, hire staff, and make it all possible. So as many of you know, people with disabilities quite often require assistive devices. The Canadian Survey on Disability in 2012 found that over 80% of people with disabilities require some sort of assistive device or a number of assistive devices to help increase their inclusion in our community. You also probably all know that assistive technologies can be quite expensive. Part of that is small market. There's not always a huge market, so it can sometimes be frustrating that a device that is in some ways much simpler than the smartphone you carry in your pocket can cost tens or hundreds of times more. It's just a large part of that is a small volume of marginal returns. The people that Neil Squire Society has served and that we're serving through this project, it's very sort of wide. It's not a disability-specific group. It can be people that have a disability from birth or something that is acquired in their life, either through injury, accident, or just aging. So Neil Squire Society is unique in Canada that it has not only service programs to help people with disabilities, but also an active research and development department. We work with a number of organizations and help increase accessibility of their projects. One of the things that we've kind of learned the hard way in the 90s, 2000s is that quite often by the time the system comes out and then an accommodation is made to make it accessible, the rapid change in technology can make it difficult by the time something is commercialized to actually get out there because the technology landscape has changed. So our work with Makers Making Change is really trying to change that model by getting projects out there quickly and in an open source fashion so it can build at a local level, not have to set up distribution channels and networks. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the maker movement. I think that's probably an area that is newer to most of the people on this call. So Makers Making Change is trying to leverage three sort of cultural phenomena that are going on. The first is the maker movement. So the maker movement is a bit of a counterculture movement to the rapid consumerism that we see, where a lot of people have gone away from making things or repairing things, and we've gone to be consumers. And, if your toaster breaks, people will just throw out their toaster instead of fixing it. So the maker movement is looking at trying to get people to, again, get back to fabricating things, to making things. And this can be a wide range. Artists are makers. People that sew are makers. Though a lot of the work, when people think of the maker movement,
is thinking about things like 3D printing, laser cutting, microcontrollers, and miniature computers. And we're really interested in how we can leverage these sort of STEM programs, these engineers that want to get back to their communities, and other sort of maker groups and maker spaces to help make assistive technologies. In many communities, there is a maker space or a number of maker spaces. And it's sort of like, you know, when I grew up, my dad had a garage. You could go in there and play with tools and tinker and do things. I live in Vancouver, BC now. It's mostly just condo towers. There are no more garages being built unless you're a multi-millionaire. So I'm a member of my local makerspace, and it's essentially like that community garage, but with better tools, but also a network of other people that are interested in building things, making things, and quite often sharing their ideas and helping contribute to help other people build their projects. Some of these maker groups, or even computer science groups sometimes, will have what they call hackathons or make-a-thons, where people will come together to make different things, whether it's software products or innovations. So we've leveraged that and done some events around making assistive devices. So what we do is we have different teams formed, but the captain or the center of that team, the person with a disability, also sometimes called like the need knower. They know what they need, and we try to have multidisciplinary teams. There might be someone with electrical skills or mechanical engineering skills, ideally an occupational therapist that has some background in deploying different devices. And then over the course of that day or that weekend, they'll prototype and make different assistive technologies or solutions for people. I say that. The second sort of part that we're leveraging as part of our work with Makers Making Change and making different assistive technologies is the open source network, or open source movement. So you've probably heard of open source in terms of software, things like Firefox or Linux or Drupal. And so what that means is the code base is open. Anyone can look at the code base, make edits to the code base, and contribute to that community to help make a better project. So we're very interested in the open source hardware sort of thing, so where people can share their designs, their templates, maybe it's their code as well, but try to create processes where, like, if you can create an assistive device, let's document it and share it so that thing can scale and scale quickly and more affordably. Finally is the crowdsourcing movement, trying to help leverage people in different areas, sort of a distributed manufacturing sort of area. So you might have be familiar with things like crowdsourcing, such as like Airbnb, where people are sort of sharing their homes, Lyft or Uber, where people are sharing their cars to give rides, or Wikipedia is a very famous one where, you know, it's an encyclopedia that is being shared publicly. That's really the work that we're trying to do. So we're trying to help connect occupational therapists or people with disabilities to makers in their community to help make things. I want to get away from me making things locally and shipping it out and help build that capacity at the local level. And we feel that's important for a couple of reasons. One, an accommodation for a person with disability really needs to meet their functional needs, their personality, their aesthetics, and their desires. So you need that face-to-face interaction and engagement and perhaps iteration to get that right so it works for the individual. We also find that when makers or volunteers or hackers work with a person with disability and they can see the impact of their work and how it empowers somebody, quite often new social relationships are formed. And quite often cut traditional sort of social economic divides and boundaries. So these individuals quite often will want to do other projects, will help support projects longer term, and really ensure that the assistive technology is adopted because it meets the person's needs better. So these sort of three movements that are leading to open sourcing different assistive technologies. So I'm going to talk about a couple of the different projects that we're working on and are doing now. So one is the lip sync that I talked about momentarily. So this is essentially a mouse that you can use with your mouth. It has a joystick that someone can use their chin or mouth to move a mouse cursor on their laptop, their desktop, or even a mobile device as long as it's not an Apple iOS device. around the screen. So you can move it up, down, left, right, and move the mouse cursor. And then you can left click or tap by popping on the tube, or you can go back or take a right click by sipping on the tube. And then by sipping and popping for like 3 seconds allows you to kind of swipe or drag or scroll. So it basically enables someone that has no ability to use their hands at all to use a touchscreen device. So this is the project we had funded by Google, and we've been working very hard the last year to sort of get this project out. We finished engineering about a year ago, and we've done a number of these build-a-thon events where volunteers are coming for the day. I'll provide the kits. I'll do the 3D printing beforehand, the outer shell, so the joystick parts are 3D printed, and then we'll build 15 or 20 of these in the day. I've had success in getting those build-a-thons funded by different corporate partners such as Google or Canadian Telecom and TELUS, which means these devices I build in the day then go out for free to people with high-level spinal cord injuries associations, ALS foundations, or rehab centers in the community. The cost of parts for the lip sync is about $200 US. Compare that to the quad toy, which is close to $1,000, or the joust, which is about $1,500. So it's also a compelling request when I'm looking for funding. It's like, we could buy 2 quad joys, or I can build 10 lip syncs. So those help sort of scale this effort. It's a great opportunity for makers to get back to the community. It's kind of everybody wins. We make more assistive technologies at a lower cost, and it's a great way for people in the community to volunteer and get engaged. And that's what I just talked about, all the different sort of build-a-thon events that we've done. We've done about 20 of these now, and we have a number coming up in May and June specific to the lip sync project. If there's anybody that is on this webinar that would like a lip sync or know someone that needs a lip sync, I'm literally going to be building about 150 of these over the next 6 weeks through some corporate support that I have. So I'm happy to send a unit to different people to try their clients, and then we feel like we have a number of people that may need these to work with you in helping host an event and do a build-a-thon. I'll bring the tools and the kits. What I need your support on is helping find the recipients and some marginal amount of funding to help build a number of these devices. Yeah, so this is one of the build events we did. It was one of the first ones we did. So this was at a high school in my community. So these were all students that were between grades 9 and grade 12 that were had some technical sort of skills, but not all of them. Many of them had not soldered before. So we did a little introduction to soldering sort of piece at the beginning of the day. We built about 25 lip syncs that day. And then when we do these events, I try to make sure that we have either a person with a disability that's been waiting for one, or a disability professional that needs one, to kind of come in and talk about the impact. And so for these students who have maybe done their electronics 8 course, maybe some tinkering with computers, or maybe none of that at all, to see that they not only can gain the skills to make these devices, but to kind of make that connection to see the the ability to sort of make an access device that helps person with disability. It can be quite transformative for them to kind of see the impact of their quote-unquote schoolwork. I was not a great student, and I blame a part of that on my apathy, but also just, you'd work really hard on a paper, you get your B, and then it goes in the bin. Like so what? This is a chance for people to learn skills and really see the impact of their work to go forward. And we've had a number of stories of this. Sorry about my formatting, but this was James. He was a grade 12 student. He worked really hard on his lip sync. He made a couple mistakes. We helped him fix it through the day. And at the end of the day, the bell rang, and his lip sync wasn't working, and he refused to leave until he got it sorted out. So all the other students had their pictures taken from the backdrop, all the cleanup was done, but he stayed an extra hour to get that work done. And he was not, known as a top student at his school, but just that sort of ability to, make something with his hands and see that, he could do something to help somebody was really transformative for him. And I've stayed in close touch with James since that event. So a lot of the work that we're trying to do right now is help raise not only awareness that, STEM programs or makers can help make assistive technologies, but help raise awareness in the disability community that these are options that are available to you, whether it's a lip sync device or some other projects that I'm going to talk about here quickly, that can be made at very affordably at the community level, and perhaps can help you as an OT in terms of, you may have clients that may need accommodations, you're not sure how best to do that, or you have an idea, but you may not have the time. There's a number of volunteers that are at the community level that are happy to help you, especially in California. The largest maker fair in the world is held right in your backyard in San Mateo, and it's just in a few weeks, May 22nd. We'll be having a booth there and doing a session. And last year when we were there, we literally had hundreds of makers that signed up that said they wanted to use their skills to help build assistive technologies for people in their community. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of our other projects going on. The lip sync was definitely kept us very busy, but there's a lot of other things that can be made very simply. So these are just different writing aids. The one on your left of your screen that kind of looks like the letter C or the letter U going around your hand is actually modeled off of a writing aid that my executive director uses, Dr. Gary Birch. He's one of the Officer of Order of Canada. He's a PhD in electrical engineering, and he's also a C6 quadriplegic. So for him, he's able to move his arms, but doesn't have the ability to articulate his fingers, and it's a difficult time that pincher grasp. So things like picking up a pen, or a toothbrush, or a fork can be very difficult. So that writing aid there is a model off the one that he had made for him a number of years ago, that he can, slide off his desk and kind of slide onto his hand, and then there's just a pen that goes through it. It's held in by a screw, and enables him to do the important things like sign our contracts or sign my paycheck. Some of the other writing aids there are very small, fairly simple builds. These are done with 3D printers. Just to give you an idea in this sort of rough estimate, that writing aid that my executive director uses on the left, we can print that on our 3D printer in under an hour. That's maybe $1, maybe $1.50 worth of plastic. And again, because this stuff is open source, you can change the dimensions of it. You can make it smaller to fit someone's hand. You can scale it in. You can put their name on it or their favorite sports team. You can really personalize it and customize it for that individual. So these are some examples of writing aids that we've been piloting and trying with people. The one on the far right is just a 3D printed sort of ball. You may be doing similar things with putting a hole through a tennis ball, to put a pen or writing utensil in, or a wiffle ball. But again, the 3D printing allows you to change the size of it to maybe fit someone's different functional capacity or needs, whether they have arthritis issues or smaller hands. And again, to personalize it, right? Print in a different color, put a different logo on it, really make it sort of meet the personality of the end user. Some other ones that have been very popular for us has been a bottle opener and door opener. The bottle opener is a SIP 3D print. And our sort of standard one that we have shared on Thingiverse and our website is really meant for that standard sort of Coke or water bottle, where it allows someone to kind of put their hand around and get a small squeeze to open. But again, the nice thing about this is it's open source. So you can work with a maker and change the dimensions of it. And I did this with my grandma actually. She's 92. Shouldn't be living independently, but refuses to live any other way. And she has a certain bottle of Ocean Spray cranberry juice that she drinks every day. But the arthritis in her hands has gotten quite significant where she's unable to twist and break that lock. But the top of that bottle is a little bit larger than your standard Coke bottle. So I was able to take this bottle, slightly stretch it, print it out, so it would fit exactly that cranberry juice bottle. The other things that she tried buying, at their local store, there wasn't anything that fit that size. So this has enabled us to literally have this device so she can drink her juice that she likes on a daily basis without pain of getting into it. The key turner on the right side has been a popular piece too. This typically when we're doing a conference at an NOT exhibit, we give these away as sort of swag. We print a number of them. It allows you to sort of screw a key into it. We started this actually, again, my executive director has a tough time with finger articulation. He can kind of loop his fingers through it to open doors. But we found that people with arthritis or other hand issues with difficulty gripping the small key, this works to give them more torque on it. They can put their hand around it. Don't have to have that sort of fine pincher grasp. Another example where 3D printing can help, you may be familiar with different sorts of switch access. Some of the difficulties or costs in making switch mounts. So this is the micro light switch. It's a common switch for someone that has a very limited movement. It's a very low sort of a touch threshold to activate. So even if you just use that same assistive switch, 3D printing the mount for it can save you a significant amount of dollars. The AbleNet mount for the switch mount costs $55, and that's literally it's $1 to 3D print something similar. And then you could put what's called a quarter 20 insert. It's just a metal insert you buy a bag of at your local hardware store. But that allows the piece that threads into there to use any sort of camera tripod mount, which are ubiquitous. It again has a sort of economies of scale. There's a number of sort of tripod mounts you can find in your dollar store, your local car or automotive or hardware store. So even if you keep the same assistive technology to be the commercial thing that you traditionally use, by sort of 3D printing or using sort of maker skills, you can actually mount things for significantly less. There's a lot of switch mounts have been done by a great organization, AT Makers, based in Florida. And literally, you can save hundreds of dollars on mounting switches for people, which really can enable things to scale and increase your budgets in terms of making different accommodations. Before I get to that, I just want to talk a little bit. We're hopefully going to launch our new website this weekend. A lot of the projects that are on there right now are projects that we've done and we've built, but we're really trying to open it up, and it goes back to that crowdsourcing piece where we want people that have made projects to share their plans and share their ideas. I've been to different weekend sort of make-a-thons, and sometimes there's some really brilliant solutions that come out of that really help that individual. So what I'm trying to help people do and encourage is let's document how you did that, so someone else can do that, because this person here may need this, but so may somebody else. So trying to build almost like a catalog of IKEA projects, just less wooden pegs and Allen keys and more plans that kind of help people build these things at the community level. So if you go to our site today, you can see our projects. If you go to our site next week, well, hopefully you're going to see our other people's projects. We really want to create sort of a repository of these pieces. And we'll have on top of those projects a review system. So people with disabilities or occupational therapists, whoever, can say I like this project, but the edges on the 3D printer are too sharp. Or we made this, but it broke, and it needs to be reinforced. So it can kind of be peer reviewed, and that's kind of that validation of your peers. So people can kind of post projects, but our goal is to have projects reviewed by multiple people, so that they're sort of validated by peers, and we know that it's sort of ready to scale. We're really hoping to sort of scale some of this work in California. As I mentioned, we have some pilot funding that we're doing right now. So first off, we'll be at the San Francisco Maker Faire. That's May 18th to 20th in San Mateo, so a little south of San Francisco. If you've never been to a Maker Faire, this is the greatest show and tell on earth, as the picture says. You have a bunch of people there that are really showing projects they've done. Some of them are half done. It's not all assistive technology related, but last year there was a good dozen booths that were sort of all lined up together that were really focused on that. But it's a really cool sort of community-driven event of people sort of sharing the work that they've done. Some of it is, last year there was a heart made out of metal. It was 3 stories high, and then you could hold onto it, and it would shoot fireballs out of it every time your heart beat. So as you held it, your heartbeat was literally causing fireballs to shoot out of it. There's a giant life-size version of Mousetrap that they ran a couple times. It's just a really sort of cool community arts and tech fair. So we'll be there. We have a presentation that we're doing around different people making different sorts of technologies, showcasing them and their projects, as well as a booth. So you can come by, check out some of these things, touch them, feel them. And then a couple days after Maker Faire at Hacker Labs in Rockland, just outside Sacramento, we're going to do a workshop around laser cutting keyboard guards. From working with CTEC and some of the organizations and individuals they support, what I learned is that when someone initially gets their AAC device, their communication device, they are funded for a laser guard, or a key guard, which can help limit the input. It can help control so the wrong buttons aren't hit. But if that person's functional capacity changes, or they're wanting to put more words on the screen, so they're growing their capabilities, you cannot get funded for another key guard. So cutting what we're going to do is we're going to have some sheets of acrylic. Different AAC users or professionals will come in with their device, and we'll have some makers that are volunteering their time to help sort of lay out where the holes should be and help cut it with a laser cutter. And a laser cutter is like an Etch-a-Sketch, but instead of drawing pixelated pictures, it basically has a laser on it. It can cut very accurate, fine holes and pieces. So we're going to hopefully make 20, 25 of these AAC key guards that afternoon and evening. It's a free workshop. Through the funding support we have through the Disability Communications Fund, all the materials are covered. We'll have food. If you can bring your device, give a heads up on what you're bringing, on what app the person uses. We can maybe cheat a little bit and get some stuff done beforehand. But that's the goal. We're going to have an evening where we're going to build a bunch of these. So if you're interested in that, you can visit our website, makersmakingchange.com, and sign up for the event. Again, it's a free event. And then this is the website piece that I was talking about. We had our final walkthrough of it this morning, actually. So we're hopefully going to launch it this weekend. So it's an opportunity for you to not only see different projects and contribute different projects, but we're also going to have a connect feature. And what I mean by that is, right now, if someone wants to get involved in email Chad, and Chad tries to find somebody else through his vast pile of email. This is sort of going more that sort of crowdsourcing, Airbnb sort of route where you can say, I live here on the map. I need this project. Connect me to a maker in my community. Or flip side, a maker in their community can say, I live in this community. I have these sort of skills like 3D printing or access to a laser cutter, etc. And I'm willing to volunteer some of my time to help do it. So the only cost to anyone involved is just the cost of material. So we're hoping that people with disabilities or third-party funding support can help cover that. But again, it allows us to make custom things at a much more affordable level that really meets the functional capacity needs of the individual. Yeah, so it's just a little bit of the sign-up process. So people, the sign-up can say they're a maker or they're a person with a disability or they're an OT or disability professional or both. And I have people on my staff who are a maker and have worked in assessments and have a disability, right? So people can wear multiple sort of hats. They can sort of say different things they're interested in, choose the skills that they have, and kind of put themselves on the map to sort of join the community. And that's essentially it. I'm happy to take questions or comments from anybody, and really hoping to explore different ways that I can sort of help scale and connect the maker movement to different people's fields of practice in the disability community. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chad. So there were a couple comments that came in, and we have a question for James Severson from the Everett program. It says, he said it's a question for later. He said I can send an email about these. He says, y'all don't use the language of UX design, universal design, or do you use that? I find that empirically interesting, so I hope to learn more about it. Treating people as experts of their situation is key. Do you all get in touch with disabled activists too? So maybe we can.
Why don't we stop there before
the
next piece? Yeah. There's two questions there. So I do have on our team an industrial designer. So everything that looks pretty, I get zero credit for. But yeah, the principles of UX design are important, and that's again a big part of why we're trying to build a matchmaking service. There was another project, and I won't name it, but they were making 3D printed prosthetics in hands for people with disabilities. But a lot of what's happening is people are like, oh, I'll make them a cool Hulk hand or a cool looking Iron Man hand. And so they make this thing and then send it to the organization, and that organization would send it to somebody. And big surprise, it didn't necessarily work because it didn't necessarily reflect the needs or desires of an individual, and you just don't pop a prosthetic on somebody, right? There's measurements that can be a very iterative process. So trying to connect the person that needs assistive technology, the person that's helping make it and describe it, I think is really key to have that sort of personal interaction along that process. Okay, so let's go through. Melody Taylor asking when I'm opening a location in SoCal, specifically San Gabriel Valley. I imagine that's maybe your home base. So what I'm really trying to do is help connect those sort of networks together. So I'd be happy to chat with you, Melody, about sort of where you're at and different projects you need, and then connect you to a makerspace. Our manager of research and development is, I think, planning to be in the South California / LA area in June. So he's always looking for friendly people to meet along his travel. So I'd be happy to sort of connect and see how we can help support you with that. Okay, I've just scrolled down to Jim Spencer from IRLC Santa Barbara. If there is a device that is already created and somewhat esoteric, is there a database or a listserv or some way to determine if it's already available or in production? I'm hoping a role that Makers Making Change can fill with our new launch website. And I've sadly seen this along the way where people are reinventing a wheel that already actually rolls quite well. So to try to really document not just our projects but other projects so people can kind of connect and share around those. And I've had talks with other groups that are doing similar work, and they seem very open. That's the great thing, in my opinion, about the makerspace movement is most people that are involved in this and sharing their work want it to scale and want to go larger and are looking for different opportunities to do that. So I'm hoping, as our site matures and develops, that there's a number of plans so people can, go on the site, they can do a search like, all right, show me different, writing aids, or show me things that can address pain disabilities, and see different projects that are there, and then either build it through the instructions or tweak it, remix it, remaster it to better meet their needs. Maybe we'll make a change to meet their functional needs, and then ideally share that back to the site, share it with the community so everybody benefits from their work and innovation. Okay, I don't see any other questions, but spreading this work is kind of what I'm supposed to be doing with my time. So feel free to reach out, send pieces. Happy to connect. And thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to just learn a bit about what we're doing, and hopefully some of our work can help empower you, your practice, and the people you serve. Thank you very much.